Hi everybody, Chris Titley here and welcome to Scoreboard. Scoreboard is based on one simple premise, and that is premium access for curious minds. We have conversations with athletes, coaches, owners, CEOs, stakeholders, broadcasters, and people who think, lead and make things happen. No buzzwords, no jargon, just clear thinking, lived experience and lessons that you can use to be a better you. We bring the access, they bring the experience, and you bring the curiosity. Together, we build the only scoreboard that matters. Your own. Scoreboard. Premium access for curious minds.
This episode is powered by Swyftx, Australia's top-rated crypto exchange and proudly homegrown. Now let's get to today's episode.
Hi, it's Chris Titley here, and on today's episode of Scoreboard, the podcast, I'm joined by Ray Chamberlain. Ray, thank you so much for being part of this podcast.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for the invitation, mate. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, now, a little bit of a story about how we're chatting today, Ray. My 12-year-old son, George, saw you on the telly and he said to Dad, wouldn't that be great to interview a former AFL umpire or AFLW umpire currently to tell some stories about the stories of sport on your Scoreboard podcast? And I went, that's a great idea, George. So I reached out on LinkedIn and here we are.
Well, you have to pass on my sincerest thanks to George. I appreciate him thinking of me as being worthy. And who does George support?
The mighty Brisbane Lions, the current premiers, but big challenge on Friday night.
It'll be a monster game, actually. And I think, I'm a massive believer in sport. You back the champs until they prove otherwise. And but they've had some belting battles. I don't need to tell you with Geelong, and Geelong are healthy, happy and aligned. So I think it'll be a very interesting game on Friday night.
Yeah,
good luck, George.
Thanks. He'll listen to this, Ray, and I really, really do appreciate it. I'm going to dive into you for a second. Your love of footy, your love of AFL, where did it come from?
Well, I was born and raised in Canberra, and my family is actually more aligned with rugby league. My mother's uncle played rugby league for St George, played for Australia. My dad played rugby league. And I got into Australian rules football by accident. So Mum got cranky waiting for Dad, who was always working, to go and sign me up. I was 5 years old, and so she threw me and my two younger brothers in the back of the car and down to the local oval, football registration here today. So I get signed up and I trained for the next 6 weeks with my new best mates. And Dad came to my first game. I jumped out of the car, ran over to the coach, and Dad got out of the car and there were 4 goal posts at one end and 4 at the other end. He sort of looked at Mum and, what on earth have you signed the boy up to, And from there, the connection and the love of Australian rules football was formed. And Mum and Dad are mad fans. They're mad Swans fans. Dad coached. Mum was a vice president of the league. They were invested in everything that we did. And I fell in love with Australian rules football and ultimately ended up becoming an umpire, but played a couple of hundred games for my local club and played some rep footy. It wasn't any good, but I loved it.
Were you a Swans fan or are a Swans fan?
So I think there for a period of time, the Swans, particularly when it was Adam Goods and those guys before him.
I'll preface this before your reffing days because you might get into trouble if you say that, right? So,
no, I'm retired. I can say what I like now, Chris, and I do. So we're Django Unchained now, but no, back in the day with Adam Goods, Paul Kelly before that, and those lads, Paul Roos and Tony Lockett, the Swans was in our region where everyone's second favourite team if it wasn't your favourite team. But for me, no, as a child, I grew up following Hawthorn. As I said, I played junior footy and my brothers played and my cousin, who was my best mate, he played and we all played for the same club. And we had a social function one year to raise money. And I remember it was the first time I ever met a VFL footballer. So Dermot Brereton and John Platten were the two guests. And it was like Elvis and Robbie Williams had walked into the joint. Like we were just, oh, my God. And so my cousin and I were like, we're Hawthorn fans. That's it. And so, yeah, as a kid, I followed Hawthorn. But I take great pleasure in telling everyone, Chris, that as an umpire, I hated everyone the same. no favourites, mate.
There you go. And then a couple of hundred games you mentioned about playing yourself, but then getting a whistle in your hand and maybe doing your first, were you sort of as a kid umpiring the juniors as well?
Yeah, so I came home one day. My mum, she's the smartest person in our family by a mile, and she had a stellar career, actually, which she will talk down and never speak of, but she's a really impressive woman. And She worked in the public service her whole life. She was an EA to the secretary of an department, and that does that. She did basically ran their lives. Anyway, I come home one day, and the long story short is she asked me I needed to take more of an interest in my younger brother. She was a bit worried about my younger brother, who, by the way, is fine. Yeah? So Brian's got a great life, got a family of his own and doing great. But at the time, Mum was right. I was 17, Brian was 12, and Mum was like, you need to take more interest in him. So, look, you're going to have to brainstorm some ideas here, Mum. What do you got for me? And she was, go and watch him play footy. So I went to his game that weekend. This is in Canberra. 8 a.m., Chris, the unholiest of hours in winter in Canberra, I assure you. And lo and behold, no umpire turned up. And the club president came and saw me and begged me to officiate the game. So I did that, and it got to half time, and this fellow came up to me, and it turns out he was there watching another guy on another ground, and he was an umpire's coach and recruitment guy, a gentleman by the name of Bob Stacey, who's a wonderful fellow. And Bob sort of said, how long have you been doing this? And I said, about 45 minutes. And he said, no, not today. How long have you been doing it? I was like, Bob, I understand the question. I've been doing this for 45 minutes, mate. And keep in mind, like, I was 17, so this is 32 years ago. And he said, mate, you can earn 6 figures part-time doing this. Well, Bob had my attention, Chris. So, and he harassed me for a while. And in the end, I relented and went and had a go and sort of was trying to be curious, which I find helps in life. And I found out I loved it. I just loved it. I love the game, and the role, actually, as challenging as it is, was so much fun. And I was okay at it. And so I pursued that in the winter and did a little bit of playing. And then but cricket was the game I thought I was good at, and I'd played that through the summer. That was my late teens, early 20s.
There you go. I'm curious around the feedback that you got to think that you had a good game and that you felt that you were good at umpiring.
Oh, you always get feedback, whether it's solicited or otherwise. So it's really interesting. So obviously you have umpires, just like clubs and teams, they have coaches who provide education moments, opportunities for improvement, right? And then there's obviously assessment when you get into a more elite program. And then, of course, this was actually profound, and I speak about this a lot when I'm at footy clubs and leagues and talking about the role of officiating in sport. But people knew me because back then you had to apparently be overweight in your 60s and grey hair or bald to umpire junior sport, right? So I was a bit of a unicorn, Chris, in that I was a young guy. And people knew me because, oh, yeah, you played rep footy. It's Canberra. It's a small town, really. And I would get feedback from other clubs that I didn't play for. So I'm talking about Ainsley Football Club, West Canberra, whatever it might have, Queanbeyan, whatever it might have been. And the coaches would come and see me after I'd umpired the games. And, of course, parents barrack and, all of that. But they'd go, mate, you really, thank you for that. You need to keep doing this. And just those little things, I can remember these moments, right? And so you're in your infancy in pursuing something, and then you get this unsolicited positive feedback and affirmation that what you're doing is valued. It's incredible how powerful that is for young people in particular.
When it came to, sorry, you keep going.
Yeah. No, so that was the catalyst around me. I think A, I enjoyed it. B, I was passionate about AFL footy in general, and then that level of, rather than abuse and everyone thinking that they're playing for the farm and getting bullied and harangued and all of that sort of garbage that sadly we hear way too much of in junior sport, regardless of the sport. Now, I actually was fortunate enough that people were mature enough and insightful enough to provide me with more positive feedback and support. And the resilience and confidence and self-belief that instilled was profound if I reflect on it now as a nearly 50-year-old guy. So, yeah, that's probably some of the feedback.
Well, that's good feedback, and you did touch on then now that maybe there's some high turnovers and shortages of umpires because of people aren't as resilient as you, and there's some things that shouldn't be said, etc. We can dive into that later potentially, but I'm curious to know around as each weekend came and you were pretty much looking forward to the game. Was there a goal in mind, or you just sort of did it because you enjoyed it?
No, to be honest, so I would umpire on one day, I'd play on the other. So, you might be playing in the under-18s on a Saturday, and then Sunday I'd be umpiring. So I made my way up through the ranks from under 14s up to 19s, reserve senior footy in Canberra. And, I was doing it, I enjoyed it, but B, it was like my part-time job. So you make a bit of money, you're staying fit, I could run. That was something I was good at. I was a good runner, and I understood the game. So that was sort of why I was doing it. You're going to school and you go to your first year uni. You're doing these things, and so that was one way that I would derive an income. And I've always been a guy that's had multiple revenue streams, however that works, in life. And so, I was playing cricket, I was umpiring Australian rules football, I was going to uni, and I had some development officer jobs, because I was doing a phys ed degree, and then I worked. Because I played for the cricket club, we were offered jobs at the bar in the sports clubs that we had, and so I had a bar job, and so that was how I got through uni.
And then someone obviously saw something in you, which you saw in yourself, and the feedback that you got in terms of like maybe you umpire the first grade game, and then there was full grown men playing, and obviously it's a little bit more intimidating. But then to take the next step higher again, you want to talk about that story?
Well, so I was incredibly ignorant as to the pathway that existed, because I didn't go, I saw a VFL grand final and decided I wanted to get to the MCG. That did come, but that was way, way, way down the track. I was just doing it because I got some money from it and I enjoyed it and I knew footy. But I got asked to officiate in a state league state championship, New South Wales state championships. It was held in Canberra, and so you had Wagga and all of these, Albury and all these sorts of different regions would come and play in Canberra for the New South Wales state championships. And anyway, I got asked if I was available to umpire any of these games. I had no idea that it was like a representative thing, and so I was like, yeah, sure, no worries. I'm on uni holidays, no problem. So I lobbed up and did a few games. I ended up getting picked to do the grand final. And then out of the grand final, I got selected to officiate in the national championships, which was to be held in Darwin. And I'm like, I don't have the money for a flight. Like, I can't fly up to Darwin. I had no idea that they pay for everything. They put you up in accommodation. Like, I was so oblivious. So I did that state championships. I met the state director. His name's Keith Ogston. Wonderful, wonderful man. Their family are beautiful people. And then I ended up going and doing these national championships. And I did the grand final of that too, which was Victoria versus Western Australia, Vic Metro versus WA. And out of that, a side was selected to go to Ireland and tour Ireland for a couple of weeks and play games. And an umpire was selected, and I got selected for that. And then, so all of a sudden, I'm like, geez, I'm going on overseas trips. This is the greatest thing in the world. And what was probably more relevant, actually, is that once you are in those programs, you get immersed in it and you start to understand, okay, become educated as to how all this works and what could be and how do you go about that and what's necessary. And so that then all of a sudden, this aspirational piece starts to enter the chat, and so now you're more targeted and you're focused and driven and working towards something that potentially may never happen because, quite frankly, no one umpired AFL football from Canberra, let alone did a grand final. So it was like, okay, cool, but I'm going to give it a go, and that was the catalyst for my ongoing pursuit to become an AFL umpire.
So from Canberra to Darwin to Dublin, potentially in Ireland, and then the pursuit of becoming an AFL umpire, the phone call, was it a phone call that someone said, hey, you've been selected to your first AFL game? Do you remember it?
I remember it very well. I won't bore you with the pathways and that, but essentially I'd found myself in Melbourne. I'd gone to Sydney and then got told, hey, if you're fair income, get to Melbourne. And the thing being back in the day, and it's different now, but if you made the AFL umpiring list from Victoria, from the VFL, those guys generally were good enough that they had a career whereby they retired. Whereas if you made the AFL from interstate, that was potentially a little bit more of a shallower pond. And so those guys generally got the sack at some point. And so it was like, if you're going to try and make this, do it, pick the hardest path, but it'll form the brightest diamond, right? And if you make it from there, you're going to be fine. So I packed everything I had into the back of a Nissan Pulsar and made my way to the 3121, which is Richmond, Victoria, and found myself in Melbourne. It was my fourth season in the VFL, and I'd been taken aside by our state director, a gentleman by the name of Kevin Mitchell, and he said, "Listen, there's a spot. There's a spot on the list. An umpire's had to resign. Personal life matters going on." And the VFL, we're going to nominate you. And it was a bit controversial because I wasn't a rookie listed umpire and bits and pieces that don't matter. But the point was that we're backing you. You're our man. They'll make a decision in the coming weeks. Just keep being you. And then I remember I was driving to training and the phone rang on a number I didn't know, and hands-free so everyone can relax. So I answered. I was driving down Punt Road, heading to Victoria Park for training. And it was Jeff Geeshan, who was the head of the umpires. And he said, "G'day, it's Jeff Geeshan. Mate, look, I'll cut to the chase. We'd like to offer you a spot on the AFL senior umpires list. Congratulations." And I nearly drove off the road. Like it was the best. So that was 2004.
Right. And then you mentioned you're at training. Was that training from being an umpire?
Yeah, so we'd train officially twice together a week at Vic Park, which is still the VFL umpire's home base. And I was on my way out there to training when Jeff rang me to inform me, which was I still remember it today. It was incredible. It was pretty joyful.
And then that first game, and comparing that with some of the finals that you've had in Victoria, Western Australia, you mentioned, etc. The nerves, was there a next level? And in terms of the intensity and focus from you and mental energy, was there a big difference?
Yeah, I had some really wise counsel from people on the AFL list. So I spent 6-8 weeks, if not longer, where I was umpiring state league footy, VFL footy, which I loved, by the way. It was a great comp. And then I would be an emergency umpire on a Friday night or a Sunday or whatever for the AFL. And so you'd have to turn up and do all the things, and you're at training and all of that. And one of the things they said to me was, hey, in the lead up in the hour and just when we walk out onto the ground, and you need to be comfortable in this environment. You need to feel like this is your office. So every time you're the emergency umpire, go out and warm up and train and practice pre-game as though you're going to umpire this game. Like you need to immerse yourself and get accustomed to that. So that was great advice. But my first game was in Tasmania, Hawthorn versus West Coast Eagles. West Coast were unbelievable. They were flying, and Hawthorn were no good at that stage. They were doing it a bit tough. But in this game, it ended up being like a 4-point game. Like it was really close. But it was at Launceston, and as you can imagine, it's hardly 100,000 people at the MCG. It was sort of 2 men and a dog, and you went down and looked at the monkeys, and then you walked down to the ground. You know what I mean? So it was pretty laid back. And it was a very good way to be introduced to your first game, in a sense, in that way. So I've got fond memories of that. Lots of nerves there, but more excitement. You're still a bit green. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I've made it. You've just done one game, so you're chock full of confidence. But I do remember my first serious game was Carlton Collingwood at the MCG, and that was the first time I heard a roar that physically hit you, like you felt it hit you in the chest, and it's like, all right, this is a bit more serious. So yeah, great memories.
Do you have awareness of the game score, the levels of, like, I mean, you're in the zone, you're watching the game play. Do you watch it highlights and go, oh, I sort of remember that happening, but I was actually focused on this part? How does it work when it comes to sort of recalling the game, whether it's a 60-point win or a 2-point loss? You're doing your job.
It's so funny. Like you could talk to me about certain games, and I can't even recall whether I did them or didn't do them. And yet there are games where, because, and that's 20 years, close enough to 400 games, whatever. So some of them, aren't particularly relevant.
386, I think. I might have done my research. I'm not too sure.
Something like that. And then you've got games if you talk about, when I think about the first grand final I umpired, and I can still remember certain contests where I was seeing, like it was yesterday. Brendan Goddard taking a hanger, Lenny Hayes banging one through from outside 50. Like these moments where I go, and I know exactly where I was standing, I know exactly what I was looking at. So when you are within and immersed within it mentally, it's actually quite quiet. You hear everything. You know your own thoughts. You recall everything, and that's sort of when you're like so immersed in it. It's like athletes will talk about flow state and whatever. From an umpiring perspective, it's not dissimilar. You're cognitively processing stuff. You're having to move around. You're executing skill with bounce, and there's all the stuff that you've got to do. So I can remember those things, like it was yesterday, to be fair.
But when it comes to potentially being in that flow state and maybe glancing at the scoreboard, maybe not, but you're in the zone, you have to be in position. You can't have time sometimes to look around the corner, but then you think of the final whistle blows and you're sort of like, oh, maybe I wonder who won.
Yeah, so for me, take that draw as an example. So that I'm really big on, and the more experienced you get, the less worried you are about how many bounces have I bounced straight, whatever else. You become what I call situationally aware, right? So what's happening now? Why is that player constantly chasing that player when they're the forward? And actually aware what's actually happening around me here, as opposed to just correct missed unwarranted free kick. It's actually, what am I managing and what's happening in front of me? What am I observing? And so scores and that, whilst they're relevant for everyone else at the ground, in terms of my function, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter if there are 100 points in front or 1 point in front, right? If I'm awarding a free kick, it's because it's a warranted free kick from what I observed in front of me. So I never really take a great deal of notice of the score, but it is relevant sometimes to go, okay, what might be happening here from a play perspective? So, you get to three-quarter time on Friday and Brisbane are chasing Geelong and they're 4 goals down. As an umpire, your awareness of that says to you, Brisbane are going to want speed on the ball here because they need to create score. They're chasing the game. And so what does that mean for me? When there's mark, free kick, whatever, I don't want to be running in and getting around where the guy is on the mark, because the player with the football is going to take off fast and now I'm in the way and now I'm a problem. So there's some strategy piece around the way you go about your job that relates to the score, because of what will transpire in terms of the style of game. So all of those things, mate, they all sort of salt and pepper. They all have a say in what's going on.
Your relationship with umpiring, has it changed over time? Are you the same umpire that you were?
Look, you start off athletically, you're unbreakable, right? Like you run like the wind, and certainly not from an Olympic standard, but in terms of what we do, like I could proper run. And then you get a bit old and you have a few surgeries and injuries along the way. And now all of a sudden age does weary them, and you start to slow down a little bit. And you've got to but you become more experienced. You're probably more even emotively, and certainly in terms of being able to control your emotions. You develop rapport and trust with people, key stakeholders, whether that's players, officials, etc., media. And so that, I think that becomes helpful, particularly if your intentions are great, and people get to learn that about you. I think that creates far better relationship. And then you've seen things before, so it's not the first time you've seen that. So all of a sudden you're more likely to respond in a more appropriate manner, because often there's more than one answer to the question that gets asked in Australian rules football, right? It's not in or out. We trade in reasonable time, genuine attempt, prior opportunity, so they're all subjective and interpretational things. It's not black and white. That's not the game. So there's often more than one answer. So when you've seen something before and you've lived through it, you've been there, you get to learn and reflect, right? So you're more likely second time up to go about it in a better way, whatever that means. So I think the older you get, the better you get as an umpire. You should. If you're not, you should get the flick. And then now that I'm a former umpire, how's my relationship changed? I'm probably a little bit more pessimistic about certain things. but I certainly still covet what the role represents to me, to be an AFL field umpire, because it's the highest level of this game, and it's a game that I love. So I still really appreciate the sport. I love the sport. I can watch it all day. So yeah, I still love footy.
You mentioned the word trust then when it comes to stakeholders and players, etc. I'm curious to know around the trust between a player and umpire, the grey area, come on, Ray, etc. But there's banter, but it's good banter, it's healthy banter. And then that relationship between they're the ref and I'm the umpire, but maybe we can't share a beer, but we can share a beer.
Yeah, we always will share a beer. There's no problem with that. That's not illegal. And in fact, the more of that, the better for mine. But also, I think there's this ability, the ability to demonstrate a bit of vulnerability and humility, even though you're meant to sort of be a bit of a boss out there and responsible. There's times where you'll make blues, and you might not know it in the moment, but you might reflect and you review your game and you get your assessment back, you self-assess, and you've made a blue, right? Well, the minute you get to see that player again, hey, how are you? And then, because it'll be pre-game, it'll be in the rooms, it'll be at a cafe, whatever it is. So good to be able to go, hey, you remember marking contest and you got a bit stroppy on me, mate. I got that wrong. He grabbed you on the arm. I've looked at it back. I'm so sorry. This is what happened. Whatever. Even chats like that, you don't have to be, it's not confessional, but just a level of humility and honesty around and being human. I think everybody loves that, particularly in professional sport. Right way, right time. Everyone values that because they go, hey, this guy's not full of it. This guy can own his own stuff. He's trying his best too, just like me. I think that helps anywhere.
Oh, for sure. And the authenticity you mentioned as well and mistakes. Have you gone through a game and just went, this is a unicorn, this is a Nirvana game, I haven't made a mistake? Because they're always through games and every now and then you're like, oh, there's just a little bit there that I probably shouldn't have blown the whistle, but keep moving on.
Even your best games where, you may be assessed, we call it 100-100, right? So you bounce the ball 100% accurately and you're not recorded for a decisional error. Let's say you've had one of those games, which is fugazi, but let's just say you have, right? Great. There's still things that will be relate to teamwork where if I do this, it impacts my colleague in this way. And that probably I should have gone here. Yeah. So there's system stuff, there's communication, I couldn't recall his name. What is his name? I don't need to be yelling at that guy. Like I'm yelling because I'm physically fatigued. I've been caught in the middle. I've been running around and now I'm yelling. When really, when I was there, I could have just spoken quietly. That would have been, I got too wound up. All of these little things. If you want to scratch away hard enough, you'll find a myriad of opportunities where you can evolve and enhance what it is that you do if you're prepared to do it. So, perfect game. There's been lots of, if you umpire for 20 years and you do finals sort of most years and you're happy to do a grand final, and you've probably had some good games along the way. I think that's reasonable to say. But this idea that there's the perfect game, yeah, I'm not sure about that.
No, I agree. I'm curious also to know about the data that you get after a game in terms of what's changed from 2004 to now in regards to kilometres, heart rate, calories, all this sort of stuff, and some examples.
Yeah, so everything's measured. All your decisions, correct, missed, unwarranted, free kick, and then you've got all your communication. They'll have all your skills, so that's bouncing, thing that we call set kick control. So mark or free kick, and you're setting up and player stand and protected area, and when you call play on, and all of these things. So there's more stuff there. You can get in a flat spin, to be honest. And the structure and system, as I understand it, with the arc and all the cameras and the collation of all of this stuff is really, it's pretty awesome in many ways. But, you could have a Prius or you could have a Porsche 911, right? If you fill it up with sand, Chris, it'll run like a busted. So,
Yep.
I've got a view about some of this data and how helpful it is or it isn't. And, and so then that's the challenge, right? Not to be closed-minded. I said right at the start, the ability to be curious, the want to get better and evolve and humble yourself and go, I'm not meant to be perfect. It's okay. And then finding the opportunity for improvement. But I think, we can miss the wood for the trees sometimes with all of our sexy data.
Do you gamify, have a leaderboard at some point in time and go, I remember that game that I ran 17 Ks versus 16 and a half?
Yeah, so the physiological sort of elements has evolved enormously. Back when I started, it was literally it was a war of attrition. To be fair, like you'd rack those Ks up, and they weren't all running. There'd be walk, jog, and sprint, and all of the things. But I know one final I did, which was Brisbane and GWS up at the Gabba, and I was just under 19 kilometres for the game, which and it's hot. It's like that's 2019.
That was the one where the GWS got up by a couple, I think. Couple of points.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. And
Toby Green got under our skin, I reckon.
That's the night, and that was hot that day. I remember we were at the hotel, and it was high 30s, and I'm like, I didn't leave my room. I'm not going out there and getting sapped. I'm going to need all this energy tonight. So I, other than the coffee run in the morning, it was hydration and sleep all day, and that was physically taxing. But then I've had games that you'd have run maybe 2/3 of that physically, but you come off and your head's just cooked from all of that. So there's different loadings, but we all will probably have our glory story games for sure.
And you get the calories burnt.
So it's more around, you might weigh yourself before and after, as opposed to any sort of calorie intake and expulsion from an umpiring perspective. We don't have any nutritional scientists running around pricking our ears and taking our blood. But certainly, geez, I've lost 5.5 litres. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Like that might be something that at different stages, particularly during the preseason when you're doing those games, that you might take note of. But primarily I think the main metrics where we get our data is to do with our distance covered and what that looks like.
Yeah, right. 5.5 litres in a game. Wow, there you go.
Yeah, as an example.
Yeah,
but there's and again, I think we're all different, right? So if you're not carrying a heap of fluid and you're a pretty lean guy, you're not going to lose. You can't lose. You haven't got it to lose the same degree as somebody else either. So everyone's different in how that rolls, and what might be a standard loss for one athlete would be an extreme amount for another.
I've talked to a lot of athletes about the similarities between sport and business and life post-sport and life post an athlete, which I think is deeply important in regards to some of the lessons learned. In terms of your daily life now, I believe you're a mortgage broker. What are some of the lessons that you've learned umpiring footy that you take into a day-to-day routine of high performance?
Yeah, well, nothing replaces doing the work, right? So you can have as much, sexy software and automated messaging and all of the things. You can do all that, but pick that up and ring a client. That's always going to help. Pick that up and ring your BDM. Get in front of your credit coach. Do the work. Always wins, and that's the same in elite sport, right? So, but what today, as an example, first Wednesday of any month, we have a bit of a everyone's in, and we've all got responsibilities, but one of them's we got a report card, and we measure a whole raft of stuff, and some of it's to do with client satisfaction, and we have what's our win for the week, and so that doesn't have to be the biggest loan. It could be some little nuanced credit thing that you got across the line or you learned about or whatever the case may be, but we've got a heap of metrics and we report to them. We're judged by them. We know what they mean for us, and that was today. And that's the same. That's the same in elite sport, right? So doing the work, and the scoreboard doesn't lie, right? It wins W's and L's. They are what they are. So I think they're really important.
And then from a timing of game point of view, I've asked a few players about their favourite time to play. What's your favourite time to umpire?
Yeah, I'll say 2:40 on the last Saturday in September. That's obvious,
yes,
right?
Of course, yeah. And you've done that a few times, right?
Yeah, so that's without any shadow of a doubt my favourite time. It also happens to coincide with Anzac Day when, as a timing, it's always a day game still. So they're the two that you love the most. And then, ironically, preliminary finals are the hardest game you'll ever umpire. And they traditionally are Friday and Saturday night. So, I love the day game on the basis that's when grand finals currently played. But if you go, when's the best? If I can have a good sleep in, pretty cruisy day, grab a coffee or two, hydrate, eat, and then roll in for that 7 to 8 o'clock, somewhere in that window. That's my go time.
What about dinner? Do you have a light dinner? No dinner.
I won't beforehand. I'll time my food because, but I'll eat for an army after the game.
Right, and then in terms of winding down, it's a late-ish night though.
It's a shocker. I don't sleep after a game, so the day after is very empty for me because that's when I do everything to try and re-energize, sleep, and recharge the battery.
Do you watch your own games?
Yeah, you got to. I think it's super important. You can overdo it, but there are lots of things that don't get measured that are important for you to be able to observe and see, right? So it's body language, it's how you carry yourself, it's how you signal, it's how you communicate, any idiosyncrasies and stuff. You can identify those things that, quite frankly, coaches just don't communicate to you. So that's upon yourself. You were talking before about business and sport. The other thing that I'm really big on, right? Bring your weapons. Okay, so if I try to play centre half forward for Hawthorn, we're gonna come up short, right? I'm just not built to do it. So I'm not going to try and crash packs and take big hangers, and that's not my go. It's not what I'm good at. So in any team sport and any individual athlete, you'll have things that you're absolutely brilliant at and things that you struggle at. Now you don't just dismiss the things you're no good at. You got to try and be the best version of yourself at them. But 80% of your time, in my view, has got to be refining your weapons because that's what makes you great. And it's the same in business. So identify what that is and then hire around you to fill the gaps. That's my philosophy on that.
Delegate to elevate, as well, as they say. But Paul Roos also talked about his superpower. The superpower that he had was, the skill that he determined. He said, yes, I've got to practice other things. The Steph Curry, the three-pointer. Like, it's a superpower. You double down, but don't forget the other things. A really good point that you make there, Ray.
I'm passionate about it. And it's the same with parenting, like I'm big on this with my daughter. It's like I remember there was a period of time and she has a particular subject that sort of makes her a bit more anxious. She's not great at it. And I was chatting with her tutor and she goes, she's very keen on spending a lot of time on this. I said, stop that now. She goes, well, I said, let me speak with her and I'll engage and see if we can bring her along for the ride. But that is a waste of your time, her time, and my money. Let's put that to bed. She's not going to be doing that as a profession. She hates it. It doesn't light her up. It's not her path. Give that the flick, focus on the things that she's great at and drill into that. And I'm massive on that.
That's brilliant, Ray. I completely understand that as a parent with three as well, in terms of decision making and enjoyment is so important in terms of kids' sport.
Yeah, exactly.
And let the kids be kids and then work out their enjoyment by themselves, not through the parents' vicarious eyes. Now,
yes.
Ray, if you had to subscribe to one subscription service only, Netflix or Spotify, which is it?
Oh, I love the tunes, but I'm going to say Netflix. Like, wifey and I, we do Cuddle Club on the couch, strictly no denim, members only, and that's our quality time. And so we love a good Netflix series.
What's the one of the recent ones you watched, or a favourite one of all time?
Well, let's go with some recent ones. We got right into there's a little trilogy along there, but had Landman and Lioness. We watched those back to back recently.
Right.
They were fantastic, and we're currently into. I think we've got one episode to go on Quarterback.
Oh yes.
So we're rolling through those at the moment.
I just did an Eric Banner one with Sam Neill as well.
Yes, we've seen that.
Untamed, I think.
Untamed. Oh,
yes.
Bit going on there.
No spoiler alerts, but that last episode was a bit, whoa.
There was a lot. There was actually a lot. And fun fact, I saw Eric Banner driving down North Road in the Bayside in his vintage Porsche. Very old school Porsche. Like very, very old. It's going to cost more than a kidney to purchase that, looking very dapper.
Okay, I got to ask you a serious question here. Long run or a long lunch with friends?
Oh, long lunch with friends. Yeah, if it's what do I do or do more often, it's definitely a long run. That's for my own brain and my own head. But if it's with mates, long lunch.
Got a shout out for any restaurants?
No, well, we do a bit of damage at the Botanical now, so we know the owner. That always helps.
There you go. Excellent. Now, a couple of things I ask. We've got two sponsors on Scoreboard. One is Swyftx. Part of that sponsorship, we have a little segment called the Bucket List, which is a sporting event, Ray, that you haven't attended thus far. It's part of their new campaign, Where Can Crypto Take You? I'm interested and I'm curious around your bucket list sporting event.
We've got a chat group. There's a few us lads, middle-aged white guys generally, and we've got our it's called Bucket List. So I can tell you we've got a whole raft of things we're doing. It's not all sport, but the 4 sporting things we've got is we want to go and watch the Australian cricket team in India, play a game in India. So I've been to Lords, I've seen some of that, but I want to go to India and do that. Love to see a Super Bowl. I want to go and watch a Liverpool home game.
At Anfield, yep.
And I think I'm still absolutely tragic, regardless of anything, philosophical of the Olympic Games. I'd love to go. I'd love to go and just immerse myself in live events at the Olympics.
You've got 2 shots of that coming up: LA, 28, and then Brisbane in 32. Would love to see.
Absolutely.
Love to see you in Brizzy, Ray. And we've also got a sponsor in PocketSmith for the Do You Budget section. PocketSmith is the personal finance app for the household CFO, the one keeping the budget in check, paying the bills, and kicking big goals. Over 80,000 Aussies use PocketSmith to track their spending, their net worth, and plan ahead. And as part of their sponsorship for Scoreboard, we do a little section. Ray, do you budget?
Paulie, I tell you what I do more often. I have 2 girls at home, and I'll come home and there'll be more cardboard boxes that have been delivered. And I did say in passing and in jest, just in case anyone gets too upset, if I see one more cardboard box here this week, you guys are leaving in it. So we've had some dialogue at home about some of the ordering that's been done. But no, we do have a budget. If you don't put your money in, you don't direct it, it'll direct you. And so for us, we've got some key things that happen. And actually, I'll tell you, the wife was the catalyst behind that. She was the driving force behind that. I was a bit loose for a while, but she pulled me up, which was good.
So you reckon she's the CFO?
You said that, not me.
Ray, we also have this question which is about your all-time favourite sporting moment. And I preface this that it doesn't involve you. We did touch on the 2010 grand final there, which we might go into a little bit in a second. But outside of you, what do you think's your all-time favourite sporting moment that you can watch over and over again?
I can't split, and there's 3 of them, so you're going to have to deal with it, all right? I'm born and raised in Canberra, so these will make sense, all right? You might remember SCG, Australia versus the West Indies, and Michael Bevan, who
off the last
hit a
ball.
boundary off Roger Harper to win the game.
Flat back.
Unbelievable innings, and he was at the height of his powers there, Bevo. And Tuggeranong Valley guy, which is where I'm from, so with Michael Bevan we trust. In terms of another Canberra element, you might recall Wallabies playing the All Blacks, Bledisloe Cup, George Gregan, that tackle, and he jammed him on the boundary and on the touchline and spilled the ball out to ensure that we won. So that, for me, iconic, and it represents a whole heap about George. Like, he was so silky and skillful and all of the things, but a more fearsome competitor has never drawn breath. So full props to George Gregan. And then if I could, something that I could just watch and just keep watching and watch it over and over, if ever I'm on Fox and I'm scrolling through and I cop a replay of the 1989 grand final, the Canberra Raiders beat Balmain in overtime. Steve Jackson just crashing his way across. That's one of the all-time great sporting moments as a Canberran and a 70s child. So that'd be my 3.
And there might be a 4th this year. What do you reckon about the Raiders?
Up the milk. One of our staff members actually played for the Raiders, and he's just he'll just drop into the group chat, the work chat, the business chat, Oh, guys, just in case you're wondering, the Raiders won again on the weekend.
Just in case you're wondering, they're the minor premiers.
Yeah. So, Stick's doing well with that group, and they look like they're humming. So all power to them.
I'm going to touch on one of your sporting moments in your the 2010 grand final. The last few seconds. Can you want to recall what you were thinking? Whether you were looking at the scoreboard, what was going through your brain with potentially the rules and knowing the rules and the spot of maybe 26 billion people wanting to know what the rules are, and maybe someone turns to you and says, "What's going on?"
Yeah. So I the year before, I'd umpired a one-kick prelim, and there was this innocuous boundary throw-in on centre wing, and the Western Bulldogs ruckman. It's not particularly relevant, but the guy had hold of his jumper, and it's a warranted free kick, and I didn't pay it. I was like, only pay it. I remember saying to myself, wait for it to punch you in the face. Just pay the majors. This sort of silly talk. And I remember getting my match review with my coach, and he took me into a room, and I'd been selected to be the emergency umpire that year. It was the best I'd ever done in the grand final, right? So it was a great year, and he was super proud of me. Great performance. Done it today. He goes, I want to show you one thing and one thing only. And he showed me a replay of that boundary throw-in, and he said, "What's that?" He highlighted the hold on the jumper. I said, "It's a hold." He goes, "Blow your whistle, do your job," right? And that was it. And it was like a very, very stern but important lesson. So you talk about that last bit. I was in the St Kilda forward line. I was in that inside 50 when the ball bounced away and Milne couldn't get there. And I just remember saying, back yourself, pay what you see, right? So if it's a free kick in the first minute of the game, it's a free kick in the last. And I'm paid to do my job without fear or favour. So that was it for me. And then the siren sounded, and I was alongside the two Nicks, Nick Maxwell and Nick Rewalt. And I remember them saying, "What does that mean, Ray?" And I just had to say, "Well, if that scoreboard's correct, boys, we're going to come back next week." So, incredible memory. Such great times, actually. You don't realise that you're the rooster until you're the feather duster. But at the time, it was like it don't get any better than this. This is just so great. So I'm really incredibly grateful to have been able to experience those moments in my time doing whatever it was that I did.
Yeah, and then how would you describe A, your feeling, and B, the crowd and / players feeling after that game?
Crowd was nuts, and there was so all through that last quarter, you watch the game back, and they're cutting to Michael Klim and Eric Banner, Mads and Kilda fans, and they're going off, and then you got Eddie Maguire and all the Collingwood people, and they're going off, and it was brilliant. It was hot, it's 26 degrees, sunny in Melbourne. So that was that for that time of year, that's unseasonal, and it was an incredible day. And I remember at the end feeling like you're sort of a bit like, oh my God, we come back again next week. This is nuts. But also euphoric because you've aspired to reach this thing that you stupidly think you'll do, not even aware that only 50 odd people in the history of the game had ever done it before you. Oh, I'll get to do that. So it's a little bit weird that you even thought, a bit stupid and a bit ignorant that you think you're going to get the chance, and then you're there. And so for me, I was just like, oh, wow. But there was also this unknown, like, what does this mean now? Will we get picked again? What do we do this week? I've got a flight booked to go away. We're meant to go on our silly Sunday tomorrow. Like, what are we doing? So there's all these really unique experiences. But overwhelmingly, we knew it wasn't finished. Like, our job hadn't finished. So we had to prepare for another game. But also the joy. It was so much fun, like reflecting on it. This is actually why you committed your life to doing this as part of it, is for these moments, and how lucky to be a part of it. Like how so fortunate.
You sound very grateful, Ray, and in terms of reflection upon that, it's like this is an opportunity which is the pinnacle of my performance, and I'm embracing every moment. Would that be a correct statement?
Absolutely. And, like at the end of the day, like it's not about the umps, right? Everyone's there. The fans, it's about the fans, actually, is who it's about. And then the players are the ones that are the heroes in the story. And we're all just experiencing it through them. But in terms of what we do, it was so cool to be afforded the privileged opportunity and having the trust of those charged with making decisions like, yeah, mate, you're going to look after this. And then to be able to do it with Sean Ryan and Brett Roseberry, who are, in my speak, they're our legends. And so to have them there as your support to look, to help you, and you're in there with them, that was super cool for me. And I'm really grateful for having had that opportunity. And then to be able to perform well on the day, actually, and go, yeah, that's as hard as it gets. And we nailed, we did our job really great, actually. And how fulfilling is that? That's so great. And so you can walk away and go, well, jeepers, that no one wants to dance with the office sook, right? I'm not going to be that guy. And when you consider what opportunities have been afforded, if you can't be grateful, maybe seek support, because not everyone gets those opportunities.
That's some good advice. Ray, there's 2 more questions I've got. One is the scoreboard moment, which I ask is around a moment in your life which is very vivid, and then from that moment, life changed. So we'll delve into that first.
Yeah, well, I would say the birth of my daughter. For those people who haven't had children, it's impossible for them to understand. And for everybody who has, they go, "Yeah, mate, no joke."
Yep.
And you do, even without cognitively processing it. I remember driving out of the hospital, out of the car park. It's just in a different vibe entirely. As to look, mate, you can drive. It's okay. But also just more around, okay, decisions I make now aren't just about me. So, and how will this impact on her? And so, I don't want to go to work today. Yeah, well, guess what? Get up, mate. Right?
Yep.
You got responsibilities here, lad. So I think those sorts of things were super profound, yeah.
And the final question I've got is around, we touched on it briefly earlier in the podcast, but just around some advice for some parents and some advice for some players on how they treat umpires at a community level. Have you got something on that potentially in regards to, we see it more often and often now, unfortunately, and I'm now privy to competitive sport where there is scoring, because my kids are old enough now to see this kind of behaviour every now and then.
I don't want to get too preachy because we're all in it together, but
maybe not AFL specific as well, just about the officiating.
Yeah, no, this is across all sports, right? So we all profess to love the game, whatever game that might be, and so one of the, I wish this was my line, it's not. So a gentleman by the name of Paul Gardner, he's a former president of the Melbourne Football Club, and he's a marketing guy. And I remember we had coffee and one day, and we're chatting away, and he goes, Ray, I've got this little line that I like to throw around. Tell me what you think. And I said, hit me with it. And he said, when it comes to the umpires, often people will say, they lament, we noticed the umpires today. And his little throwaway line is, you'll notice them a whole heap more if they don't turn up next week. And I just went, mic drop. How good's this? And it's not about, were they great or were they garbage? It's generally they're volunteers. More often than not, they're bloody kids, right? And if you're not, and I would say this to clubs about fostering a positive environment, right? A rising tide lifts all ships, okay? So if you are not part of the solution, you're the problem. You can't be ambivalent about this. And so determining what is it that, this is our environment. We're all living here. We're all participating here. Is it going to be a shitty, abrasive, horrible environment, or is it going to be something entirely different? And actively being mindful about that, right? And I think that's super, super important. So, and for everyone's benefit, not just for the officials, they're part of it, but for the kids, for the grandparents, for the parent, for the siblings, for everybody, right? Just turn your brain on,
Ray Chamberlain, thank you so much for being on Scoreboard to share your life's journey and stories from the game of sport. My son was right in regards to reaching out to you and getting a yarn from you. It's been fabulous. Thank you for your time today. Congratulations on your career as an AFL umpire and continuing to be an AFLW umpire. I wish you all the best in the next phase of your life, post 50, I believe, next year, and look forward to catching up and hopefully meeting in person at one point in time.
Thanks very much, Chris, and please to George. I hope that he has a very good September, and he's lots of joy for George.